Number nine. Welcome to, you guessed it, Volganos Translations Podcast, Episode 9. Today we're going to be talking about, as the title so easily explains, dual swords. But before we get into that, I want to give you a little channel update, because I sent in, just yesterday, my 3DS for capture mod. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means I sent it all the way over to Japan. It costs a fuck ton of money and whatever. And Katsu Kitty Game Company, whatever they're going to do, is going to put a capture card installed inside my 3DS, and they're going to ship it back to me. And then, when I get that, after however long that takes, probably no sooner than a week and a half, 2 weeks probably before I get it back in my hands, then I'll be able to start uploading some videos for you guys. Good quality. I mean, when I say good quality, I mean the best quality possible, because it is still a Nintendo 3DS, and so the good quality means it's pretty shit quality. But, we're not getting into that today. That was podcast episode 1, 2, and 3. So that I'm really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to get some videos out for you guys. And just, getting back into the channel thing again. I'm really excited to do that. So look forward to that. It is coming soon. I'll be doing some probably live streaming, playing with some YouTube people and stuff like that, helping people out. Which I've neglected to do recently just because it's been a pain in the ass. And so all those hunts will go live, and I'm probably going to stick to sort of free hunts and stuff, just leave it on the live stream stuff, and some scripted stuff, doing that on the channel, so those will be separate videos. But, we'll see. Pretty much open and everything, so if you guys have any requests, something you want to see, if you have any questions about whatever, just let me know, and I'll do my best to include, whatever I can when I can start capturing stuff. So let's get into dual swords, right? Third weapon we're talking about. Dual swords are my favorite weapon class of all the weapon classes since Monster Hunter 1. Originally, I never knew about Monster Hunter. Obviously, like most people did until you found out about it. And when I saw my friends playing it, and I was like, dude, what game is that? It looks pretty sweet. And he's like, this game called Monster Hunter. And I was like, oh. He's like, you should get it. There's online co-op. And I was like, well, do they have dual swords in there? Like dual wielding? He's like, yeah. And I was like, done. So that week I went out and bought it, and we played hundreds and hundreds of hours together in that, and it was awesome. Dual swords are very versatile weapons, and they are some of the more unique weapons. We'll get to the why in a little bit, but they're very useful. They are just high attack ratio, the low damage for the most part, but you get in so many more attacks than you would from any other weapon in the game. It's just crazy. Just a flurry of attacks, right? They also tend to have higher elemental damage than most of the weapons and higher status infliction. And that's because you just hit so often that the chance of inflicting a status ailment on a monster, it goes through the roof. It's just insane. You do a demon dance, which is 11 hits. We'll get to know what that is in a second. And so many of those hits could, be a status ailment, or all of them. And all of a sudden, you have, a paralyzed monster much sooner than anything else, or a monster that's asleep. I love status ailment dual weapons. They're just the best. And I always try and make the elemental dual swords over like a raw. So if I had to pick like between just for, 400 raw damage and like 100 fire, whatever, or like a 300 damage and like a 250 fire or something, I'm always going to go with the higher element almost exclusively, unless the sharpness is absolute shit and like the affinity is just terrible. And if everything else points against it, I might think of something else, but there's no other option, still probably going to go with it. Same thing with status. And that's true for any status weapon, though, really. If you're going to use a status weapon, just use a status weapon. Get the best one out there you can. The highest status damage you can find. If you're going to do it, otherwise you're just playing games. The really unique thing about dual swords is they actually have double element or element and status weapons, right? So there are some weapons out there that have fire and poison, right? Or ice and paralyze, right? Or water and ice. And there used to be more fun ones in Unite, but they kind of took some of those more ridiculous ones out there. There were some fire and water ones, or fire and ice ones. I forget which one it was, and that was pretty sweet. They also used to have a thunder and paralyze that took those out, replaced with ice. I don't know why, whatever. Those are plesios killers. But unlike, you don't find that in any other weapon class in the game, with, I guess, maybe the exception is bow or gunning, just because, or bow and bow gunning, because you could have a like for instance a bow, you have a fire bow that shoots paralyzed shots. But I mean, it's a little different, right? It's not at the same time for the most part. Same thing with bow guns. You could fire shots and you can fire paralyzed shots, but it's not the same time, right? So you're not dealing damage while you're inflicting status ailments. So you're getting that 1-2 punch with the duels there, which is awesome, especially in certain monsters that are particularly weak to both of those things, like Diablos, right? Weak to ice. Well, there's also ice and blast duels, right? And those things absolutely destroy just about anything anyway, because they're really strong and whatever. But they're made from the rusted duels, by the way, in case you were wondering. But you go out there with the Diablos with ice and blast duels, and you're gonna fuck his day up, like absolutely gone to hell, right? Same thing with the ice and paralyzed duels. You got Diablos with the ice and paralyzed, and then he done. Way done. And some of my favorite duels are the Thunder and Dragon duels. Not the ones in this game until the Fatalis ones I'm talking about, but the Stygian and regular Xenogray or Genogua, those duels there, they don't look as cool. But those are a thing. Just the fact that you have Thunder and Dragon, Kushala killers. I mean, seriously. Go out of Kushala with those things. It's over. It is over. The downside of duels, though, all those attacks, you go through sharpness like instantly, like 4 times faster than most weapons. You just run through sharpness extremely quickly because there's just so many different attacks. You're attacking all the time. It just happens. Every attack so it takes away the same amount of sharpness. You can go through 4 times the amount of attacks. You can go through 4 times the sharpness. But let's get into a little bit about some of the combos that you can do with dual swords, some of the attack methods and whatever. And you kind of have to think about dual swords a little differently than most other weapons, because you can stay really close to a monster. And most people would think that you're trying to do large combos. Well, not really. In order to stay close to a monster, the monster is constantly trying to beat the shit out of you too. You have to do a bunch of little combos, which still have high attacks and high damage ratios, but you don't take them out to their fullest extent. You do a part of a combo and then jump, then do the same combo and jump around, do maybe a different combo trying to attack an area, and you're constantly moving around, so you can't really get hit. They're highly mobile weapons, for sure. So some of the main combos you're going to be using is just XXX, like most, right? So you're doing a forward attack that just kind of moves forward. Then you also have a side swipe, which goes from left to right. And then you can take that up into the air a little bit, left or right, depending on what direction your face or direction you push. And that's usually sort of a connector. So you pretty much be doing a few X inputs and then like an O and then another X. Right, so you do like XXO, 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 XO, something like that. Not quite, but and so you kind of always have to mix it up depending on how much time you have. If you have a lot of time, then you can take out the full combo to the full length. A bunch of X's, O, and then start right back over, because that O kind of ends the combo, but then lets you start another one. Right. Also, there's a forward jab with X and A when your duels are out. It's the same thing as an unsheath. You go forward, you stab forward, and you gain a little bit of distance, and then you can go right into a combo from that. And you can do that with your weapons out. You just XA, and you start that, and you start a whole new combo. And really, you just kind of have to play around with it to get a feel, because there's a lot of different options when you're doing all these things. But keep in mind that, again, while you can roll out of pretty much in between any single button combo, but you don't want to be hanging around too long in one spot. That's not the point of duels. You're supposed to be moving around a lot, getting a lot of hits in between all those movements, right? That being said, the bread and butter of dual swords is the demon mode, right? So you press R to go into demon mode, or you can unsheath by doing R, X, and A, and then it'll go right into demon mode from there, from the unsheath, and your character glows red and he looks really badass, as a sweet stance, right? That demon mode, when you're in it, starts depleting stamina continuously, right? It also gives you an attack boost, and it also changes most of your attacks, so you actually do more hits per attack, right? So most of your combos kind of feel the same, but they do a little something different. Like instead of a side swipe, when you hit A, I was saying O before, it's A. When you side swipe and you hit A, you'll go do a double jumping like flip that does like 4 hits each time you do it. And that you get a little bit of range there, which is kind of nice, because the duels, one of the downsides to them is they don't really have a lot of range. They pretty much attack right around you, and that's about it. You're trying to cut a tail that's high up in the air, not going to happen. You're trying to break horns on a face that's totally in your character, not going to happen. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But in that demon mode, you can fill up a gauge, right? So there's a focus bar on the top left, much like a longsword or something. And it goes up pretty quick. Certain attacks fill it faster than others. Your normal combos, your X and A, fill it up quite quickly, very quickly, really. But then there's the Demon Dance when you are in this mode only. Now, this Demon Dance, you have to X and A to do when you're in Demon mode, and it's an 11-hit combo. Most of the damage is on the last hit, but nonetheless, you do tons of hits in there. So if you're doing status or element, you're going to see some good rewards there, some very good feedback from doing those attacks, right? You're locked in this Demon Dance, though, so if you initiate it, you're stuck for like a good 3 to 4 seconds, and you can't really roll out of it very easily. You're kind of stuck afterwards, so it's a big commitment, but there's big reward in it, too. But it doesn't fill up your bar a whole lot. You could fill it up a whole lot faster, that focus bar, by doing normal combos. So if you're trying to fill up your gauge, don't do the Demon Dance under any circumstances. I recommend if you're filling up your gauge, start with A, go into another combo, and then end with A, and you'll get it within like 3 or 4 button hits. Also in this mode, your forward jab, X plus A, obviously is Demon Dance, but your forward jab gets moved into a finishing combo with X. So if you hit A and then X, you'll go up in the air a little bit, whatever direction you point, with a few hit combo, and then you'll do a flurry of attacks forward. You do like 3 spins in a row, and you do just a bunch of attacks again. Another huge stamina or status booster, right? So trying to do status damage, you can do that a lot. And so that fills your bar up a lot, but it also moves you forward quite a bit, and it's really cool. So you fill up that gauge, right? And then you can go out of that Demon Dance mode by hitting R again or waiting for your stamina to completely deplete. And then once you fill up that gauge, you're stuck in like a permanent like quasi-demon mode, right? We still get a little bit of an attack boost. All of your attacks have changed. You can't quite do the full Demon Dance anymore, but you get to keep the flurry forward, right? So that flurry forward now gets changed to X plus A. And it also has like an auto mind's eye, so it won't bounce. So you can just right through, all sorts of stuff to set up combos. I love doing the X plus A, X, X, A, and repeat, right? And with that repeat, you just do X again. So it's just X plus A, X, X, A, X, X, A, X, X, A. It's really easy, lots of attacks, and you can roll out at any single time. Another thing that changes is the roll, right? So you no longer have a roll when you get that focus gauge filled up and you're in like demon mode or whatever. You have a sidestep. It's a really short sidestep, but it's a quick sidestep that you can do anywhere in the combos, and you can do it multiple times, right? You can just quick hop out of the way, and it's really great for just like, oh shit, I'm in trouble, I got to get out, and you can just book it the other direction whenever you want. So it just shows that the duels are an extremely mobile weapon, right? And you got to think about that with what monsters you're facing too. If you're facing a really slow monster or whatever, then yeah, that's fine. If you're facing a really fast monster, then duels might be a really good choice for that, to sort of move around with them. So as far as using it in solo gameplay, it's great because it's easy to stay near monsters, right? Because you have that high mobility. The theory is you don't get hit too often, and if you need to back out of the way, you can do it whenever you want. So you can stay really close, doing high damage over time. With that, you're not going to feel like a super powerhouse like you would with like Greatsword or something. You come in with just a huge whopping attack, but over time you're going to notice that if you aim for the leg something, you can get a lot of good trips in. The downside to duels during solo plays, it's not very good for breaking parts. So if you're trying to fight a monster and break certain parts on them, it can be a little difficult. You kind of have to go about it strategically. You have to probably trip them, if at all possible. And then, when they're down on the ground, go for the tail or the wings or whatever you need to, which can be a little tricky and a little time-consuming. So you got to watch out for that. But really, there's not, for solos, you can pretty much use it everywhere. I've been using it the whole story. I use it against pretty much every single monster. As far as group use goes, it's pretty good. Again, you're just an overall damage dealer over time. So you're not going to be, if someone needs, put some monster to sleep, they're not going to be like, all right, duels, go in there and hit it. No, for the love of God, no. But if you're doing a group and you want to bring a status ailment because you want some certain parts that you can't particularly reach, you can go in there with sleep or with paralyze or something, or blast, and you can really bring a big contribution to the party, especially with status or paralyze. Absolutely. I mean, you get 2 people with duels that both have a paralyze element in their dual swords, and you're going to see that monster getting paralyzed a lot. But again, there's not a lot of range, so you got to watch out for that. But, I mean, at the same time, you're not tripping a lot of people either because you're just pretty much attacking right around you. You can trip some people. The Demon Dance has its own mind's eye, its own ESP, so you're never bouncing, but that also means you're not stopping. If people around there, you're going to knock them right on over, right? So just watch out for that. If you're all going for the tail, most of it's on them because if they come stand right next to you, well, they're dumbasses because you just don't have a lot of range. So if they come right next to you, that's their own damn fault. But sometimes, don't run right up next to someone. Do a demon dance to take off the tail, and then all of a sudden you're just tripping them and no one wins. Right? Some skills that you're going to want to use with dual swords. First, right off the bat, and any dual swords is going to need sharp sword or razor sharp, right? They're the same skill, razor sharp. You're going to need it because no matter what, you're doing a lot of frequency of attacks. You're going through sharpness. If you can't get that, speed sharpening, right? That's going to be super helpful. Just walk out, one swipe, get back in there because you're going to be sharpening a lot if you don't have razor sharp. Also, I really like evade +1 or +2 or +3. I have a set with +3. It's not really necessary, I think, because of the timing, because you can plan the timing so well with how quickly and how openly you have to activate your dodge, especially with I'm talking about the sidestep, right? Once you get the demon mode filled up, because you should be spending most of your time in that demon mode. It's so particular that you really need evade +2 to get really good at it. But evade +3 works, absolutely fine. You can roll through almost every single roar in the game, except for maybe Diablos, with evade +3 in duels, really easily and on a dime too. Evade distance is kind of nice because the sidestep doesn't really take you very far. So if you're trying to get out of the way from some larger monsters and you want to use duels, I recommend the evade distance. It works pretty well. If you don't have any evade, high-grade earplugs is always really nice. Just because, again, you don't cover a lot of ground with the sidestep. You can get out there pretty quickly, but if the monster has a one-up on you when you're being stunned from a scream, then you might be in some trouble. So high-grade earplugs is definitely a good welcome addition. Sharpness +1, as with any Blade Master set, is going to be really useful, right? Sharpness +1 paired with Sharp Sword for duels is just awesome. I mean, you not only get an attack boost, but you also get an element or a status boost with your weapons, and as strong as they are with those classes, duels, then Sharpness +1 really plays a big role. Constitution's really useful because, again, you're going to be evading a lot because you've been doing a lot of combos. You're going to be sidestepping the way, which does count as evade. It uses a whole chunk of stamina to evade, right? So Constitution's really useful. And of course, like I've been mentioning over and over again, element or status attack ups are going to do wonders for dual swords. Actually, element and status crit also will do extremely well if you pair that with a critical skill. One of the sets I have is element crit up with critical +3, and that's awesome. And not only, it's more awesome than most weapons because if you get lucky enough, each button press counts as one attack, right? But you do multiple hits. Well, each button press has a chance to do critical. Not each hit, each button press. So, if your button press does 11 hits and your first one does critical, the next 10 are also going to be critical for dual swords, right? So, you have the Demon Dance. You have the upward swipes with A. You have the forward flurry with A. You have, every attack does more than one hit. So if anything's a critical, everything else is going to be a critical on any button press. So pairing any sort of critical damage on there, even just critical by itself, you're going to get a lot more damage out of your duels than you would from, other classes using that critical, right? Just because of the frequency that it can happen, chained from just one button press. Especially with the Demon Dance. You just feel so powerful when you have element crit up or status crit up, and then you do a Demon Dance. You're doing 11 hits, and then every single hit of those is a critical, and you're just like, wow, I just destroyed and did work, and I'm going to do it again because this monster's lying down, right? So monsters that you're probably going to want to use duels against, that work particularly well against, are some of the smaller monsters, due to the low range of attacks, and he's just easier to get out of their way a little bit. But it's still effective for large monsters because you can still go out their legs and still trip them. But you just have less places to attack. So I like to gear towards the smaller to large or smaller to medium monsters. Tigrex is awesome. and Gormagala are awesome, and Shigari Magala, to use duels because they have really tight hitboxes. So you can evade in between their legs really easily, especially Tigrex. So all their attacks, they attack on one side or whatever, front or back, and you can just evade right through the legs really easily with that little dodge that you get from the demon mode. Rajang and Xenogray are also really nice to use because, again, they're fast monsters. You can keep up with them with duels, and they have really nice hitboxes that makes it easier to avoid. Some of the monsters that you're probably not going to want to use duels with are the flying monsters because, again, you just don't have a lot of range with duels. So some of the larger monsters, Gravios and stuff like that, you can go at their legs and all that, but you just don't feel like you're doing as much as you could with some of the other monsters. I mean, generally you're going for legs anyway, but, Gravios, when he does a beam, the tail's barely above the ground. You can hardly hit it, right? So you don't have those options if you have them. So I don't recommend using it against Rathalos or Rathian just because they fly a lot. I have in the past because it's nice to go with their tails with the demon dance, especially because they're difficult to cut, and that has a natural mind's eye. But they fly so much, makes it easier out of the way. But still, they're just they're not the easiest to attack holistically, so you got to watch out for them. Also, Celtis flies. Celtis Queen is kind of a pain in the ass because Celtis Queen and Nerscylla are kind of a pain in the ass to use with duels because you can really only attack their small little legs around there. So if you ever break their way in the center of their body, you're missing most of your attacks. So you might want to consider a weapon that has a little more range to use. But really, you can be pretty flexible with duels across a wide range. I know I've used them against every single monster in the game to date because I just make so many of them, and they're so good and they're so flexible, and I love them. But there's limitations that you got to watch out for. Duels that work better against certain monsters than others. So just keep that in mind. You are limited a little bit, but the more you practice, the better you get with it as it is. So that's all I have. This was episode 9. Next week I'll have episode 10. Or we'll talk about another weapon class. Probably nothing new, but I'm hoping by the following week I'll have my capture kit and I'll start doing some test uploads as well as some test live streams and stuff. So things are going to start picking up around here, guys, and I'm really excited. I hope you are. Thanks again for watching or listening. Like, comment, subscribe. Take it easy.